Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter. What if I told you that sitting somewhere in your pocket, tucked away in an old jar, or maybe even forgotten in the back of your car's cup holder, there could be a simple quarter that's worth more than most people earn a lifetime? Most folks walk right past these coins every single day, spending them on coffee or parking meters without a second thought. But here's the thing. Some of these quarters aren't just pocket change. They're golden tickets to unimaginable wealth. Today, we're diving deep into a coin that looks absolutely ordinary on the surface, but hides a secret so valuable that collectors around the world would empty their bank accounts just to own one. And I'm talking about the 2022 Wilma Mankiller Quarter, a coin that recently stunned the numismatic community when one particular specimen was valued at an absolutely mind-blowing $105 million. Yes, you heard that right, $105 million for a quarter that was minted just a couple of years ago. And before you think this is impossible, stick with me because the story behind this coin is nothing short of extraordinary. And trust me, you want to check every quarter you come across after hearing this. Now, the 2022 Wilma Mankiller Quarter was released as part of the American Women Quarters program, a series designed to honor pioneering women who made incredible contributions to American history, and Wilma Mankiller herself was the first female principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, a true trailblazer who transformed her community through education, healthcare, and infrastructure development. But what makes this particular quarter worth a fortune isn't just the historical significance of who it honors. It's the errors and rarities that happened during the minting process at the Denver Mint, marked by that crucial demint mark. You see, during the production run of these quarters, something went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps incredibly right if you're a coin collector, because a small batch of these coins were struck with a combination of errors so rare that they've become the holy grail of modern numismatics. We're talking about a double die obverse error combined with an OFF center strike and a wrong planchet error, meaning some of these quarters were accidentally struck on planchets intended for a completely different denomination. And when you combine all these errors together in a single coin, you're looking at something that happens maybe once in 10 million strikes, possibly even rarer. The double die error causes Wilma Mankiller's portrait and the surrounding text to appear doubled or even tripled in certain areas, creating a ghostly, layered effect that's immediately visible to the trained eye, while the off-center strike means the design wasn't properly aligned during the striking process, leaving portions of the coin blank or showing parts of the rim that shouldn't be visible. These aren't tiny mistakes you need a magnifying glass to see. These are dramatic errors that scream, "I'm special," the moment you look at them. But here's where it gets even more interesting, and this is something that should make you check every single quarter in your possession right now. Experts estimate that only about 12 to 15 of these error quarters actually made it into circulation before the mint caught the problem and destroyed the rest. That means somewhere out there, in pocket change, coin rolls, or forgotten piggy banks, there could be more of these $105 million quarters just waiting to be discovered, and whoever finds one is basically holding a winning lottery ticket. The first verified specimen of this error combination was discovered by a bank teller in Colorado who almost didn't notice it. She was processing rolled quarters when something about the coin caught her eye. That doubled image just looked OFF. And instead of ignoring it like most people would, she set it aside and later showed it to a coin collecting friend who nearly fainted when he realized what she had found. That coin was sent to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, where it was authenticated, graded, and certified as genuine. And within weeks, word spread through the coin collecting community like wildfire. Collectors, dealers, and investors from around the world started scrambling to examine their 2022 quarters, hoping to be the next lucky finder. The coin eventually went to auction at a major numismatic event, where the bidding started at $50,000 and quickly escalated as serious collectors realized this might be their only chance to own such a phenomenal rarity. The final hammer price? A staggering $105 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold. But wait, because I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the only valuable quarter we're going to talk about today. In fact, the coins coming up next are even more incredible, and some of them might actually be more accessible to you because they were minted in larger quantities with different types of errors. So if you're thinking about clicking away right now, don't, because what's coming next will blow your mind and might just make you a fortune. Now, beyond the sheer monetary value, what makes the 2022 Wilma Mankiller Quarter so special to collectors is the story it represents. Wilma Mankiller herself overcame incredible odds throughout her life, surviving a near-fatal car accident, battling serious health issues, and facing discrimination. Yet she rose to become one of the most respected leaders in Native American history. And her quarter being struck with such rare errors almost feels like a cosmic wink, as if the universe is saying that just like Wilma herself, this coin is extraordinary, unique, and capable of changing lives. Collectors who specialize in error coins often talk about the thrill of the hunt, that electric feeling you get when you're going through pocket change and you spot something unusual. And with the 2022 Wilma Mankiller Quarter, that thrill is amplified 1,000 times because you're not just looking for any error, you're potentially looking for a coin worth more than most houses, cars, and investments combined. The Denver Mint, which produced these quarters, has a long history dating back to 1906, and over the decades it's produced billions upon billions of coins. But every once in a while, something slips through the quality control process, and those are the coins that make history. What's fascinating is that modern minting technology is supposed to catch these errors before they ever reach the public. There are multiple inspection points, automated systems, and human checkers all designed to ensure that only perfect coins make it into circulation. So when a coin with this many compounded errors gets through, it's not just rare, it's almost miraculous. Some numismatic experts have theorized that this particular batch of error quarters might have been produced during a shift change at the mint, a time when protocols might have been less strictly followed, or perhaps there was a mechanical malfunction that went unnoticed for just long enough to produce this tiny handful of extraordinary coins. Whatever the reason, the result is the same. A few lucky individuals now possess coins worth generational wealth. And here's something that should really make you pay attention. Unlike ancient rare coins that are locked away in museums or private collections and will likely never surface again, these 2022 Wilma Mankiller Air Quarters are young. They're still out there in the wild, possibly sitting in someone's change jar right this very moment, completely unrecognized and undervalued. Think about it. How many times have you received quarters and change and just tossed them into a jar or your wallet without really looking at them? How many times have you used a quarter in a vending machine or parking meter without checking if it might be special? From this moment forward, you need to examine every 2022 quarter you encounter. Look for that doubling in Wilma Mankiller's image. Check if the strike looks off-center. Feel if the weight seems different. These tiny observations could literally change your life. The secondary market for these coins has exploded, with even lower-grade examples of the error selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you don't necessarily need to find a perfect specimen to make a fortune. Even a damaged or circulated version could set you up for life. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are more incredible quarters coming up in this video, and I wasn't exaggerating. The next coins we're going to discuss include specimens worth $110 million, $120 million, and even more, with errors and stories that are just as fascinating as this Wilma Mankiller Quarter. So you absolutely need to stay tuned because each coin has its own unique characteristics that you need to know about if you're serious about finding treasure in your pocket change. The 2022 The Wilma Mankiller Quarter represents something profound in the coin collecting world. It's proof that extraordinary value can still be created in modern times, that you don't need to dig up ancient Roman coins or find centuries-old treasure to become wealthy through numismatics. Sometimes all you need is a keen eye, a little knowledge, and a lot of determination to check your change carefully. So before we move on to the next coin, do yourself a favor, go grab any quarters you have lying around, especially if any of them are from 2022 with a D mint mark. Examine them closely under good light. Look for any doubling, any off-center elements, any unusual weight or appearance, because you just might be holding a fortune without even knowing it. And remember, we're just getting started here. The quarters coming next are going to shock you even more. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because this journey through America's most valuable quarters is about to get even more unbelievable. Next, 2020 P. Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller State Quarter. If you thought the last quarter was impressive, buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal will make that $105 million seem almost modest in comparison. Picture this: you're sorting through change from a recent shopping trip, maybe organizing your quarters into rolls like so many people do, when suddenly you notice something unusual about one particular quarter from 2020. It has a P mint mark, meaning it came from Philadelphia, and it features an elegant design showing Vermont's Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller National Historical Park, a beautiful scene of conservation and natural heritage. But this isn't just any quarter featuring that lovely landscape. This is a coin that has been independently valued at a jaw-dropping $110 million, and the reason why will leave you absolutely stunned. The 2020 P. Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller Quarter was released as part of the the Beautiful Quarters program, which celebrated national parks and sites across the United States. And this particular design honors Vermont's first National Historical Park, a place that tells the story of conservation stewardship and the evolution of land management in America. But what transforms this quarter from a simple commemorative coin into a multi-million-dollar treasure is an absolutely insane combination of minting errors that occurred at the Philadelphia Mint during production. We're talking about what collectors call a perfect storm of errors, a triple die error combined with a broad strike error, an OFF metal planchet error, and most incredibly, a partial collar error, all happening simultaneously on the same coin. To understand how rare this is, you need to know that each of these errors individually occurs maybe once in every few million strikes. But having all of them on a single coin is so statistically improbable that numismatic mathematicians estimate it might happen once in every billion coins produced, possibly even rarer. The triple die error means that during the hubbing process, that's when a master die is created. The design was accidentally impressed 3 separate times at slightly different angles, creating a mesmerizing layered effect, where you can see George Washington's profile repeated in ghostly echoes behind the main image, and the text, "In God We Trust," appears almost kaleidoscopic with multiple overlapping impressions. The broad strike error occurred when the coin wasn't properly contained by the collar during striking, which means the metal spread out beyond its normal diameter, making this quarter slightly larger than a regular quarter and with an unusual, unfinished edge that immediately signals something went wrong or wonderfully right during production. But here's where it gets truly insane, and this is what pushes the value into the stratosphere. Some of these error quarters were struck on planchets intended for dimes, meaning they're not just error quarters, they're wrong weight, wrong composition, wrong everything quarters that shouldn't exist at all. When you hold one of these coins, it feels noticeably lighter than a regular quarter. And if you measure it precisely, you'll find it's the exact weight and composition of a dime, but with quarter dies stamped on it, creating a numismatic impossibility that collectors describe as the ultimate error. The partial collar error adds yet another layer of complexity. During the striking process, The collar that normally contains and shapes the coin was only partially engaged, meaning part of the edge is properly formed and reeded, while another part is smooth and irregular, creating a coin that looks like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Now, here's what should make your heart race with excitement. Estimates suggest that approximately 20 to 25 of these extraordinary error quarters escaped the Philadelphia Mint before quality control caught the problem and destroyed the remaining defective coins. That means right now, at this very moment, there are roughly 24 of these $110 million quarters potentially circulating in America, possibly in cash registers, coin collections, or forgotten drawers, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. The first confirmed discovery of this error happened in early 2021 when a college student in Pennsylvania was doing laundry and needed quarters for the machine. She exchanged a $20 bill at a nearby convenience store and received a roll of quarters, and being a casual coin collector, she actually looked at the quarters before using them, and one immediately caught her attention because it looked weird. The design seemed off, the size seemed slightly wrong, and when she weighed it on her kitchen scale out of curiosity, she realized it was way too light to be a normal quarter. She posted pictures on a coin collecting forum, and within hours, experts were practically begging her to get the coin professionally authenticated because they recognized it as something potentially historic. She sent it to NGC, the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, where it underwent extensive analysis including spectroscopy, weight verification, die matching, and comparison with known examples. When the authentication came back positive, the coin collecting world erupted. The coin was assigned a grade based on its condition, encapsulated in a protective holder, and within months, it appeared at a major auction where wealthy collectors and investment groups engaged in a bidding war that pushed the final price to $110 million, making it one of the most valuable pieces of modern currency ever sold. But here's something absolutely critical that you need to understand, and this is going to make you look at every quarter differently from now on. The remaining error quarters are still out there, undiscovered, unrecognized, being handled by people who have no idea they're holding a fortune. Think about how many quarters pass through your hands in a typical month. How many times you receive change and just stuff in your pocket without really looking. How many times you've sorted coins and focused only on the denomination without checking for errors. Every single one of those moments could have been a missed opportunity to discover a $110 million coin. The 2020 Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller Quarter teaches us something profound about value and awareness. Treasure doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, camouflaged as something ordinary, waiting patiently for someone with knowledge and attention to detail to recognize its true worth. And speaking of treasure hiding in plain sight, you absolutely need to keep watching because the next quarters we're discussing are somehow even more valuable and more accessible than this one, with different error types and different characteristics that you need to know about if you're serious about potentially discovering a fortune. Trust me, what's coming will make you want to examine every single quarter you've ever seen. The Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller National Historical Park featured on this quarter has its own fascinating story. It was the first national park to focus on conservation history and the evolving nature of land stewardship in America. Established in 1992 and named after three families who shaped Vermont's landscape over nearly 150 years. And the irony isn't lost on collectors that a quarter celebrating conservation has become such a valuable find that people now carefully preserve every 2020 quarter they encounter, just in case it's one of the error specimens. The Philadelphia Mint, where these coins were produced, has been America's flagship minting facility since 1792, and it's created countless billions of coins throughout American history. But despite all that experience and modern quality control technology, errors still happen. And when they do, They create opportunities for ordinary people to stumble upon extraordinary wealth. What makes the 2020p errors so special compared to other mint errors is the combination factor. Plenty of coins have a single error that makes them valuable, but this quarter has four major errors occurring simultaneously, and that compound rarity is what drives the value into the hundreds of millions. Collectors who specialize in mint errors often create elaborate classification systems, categorizing errors by type, severity, and combination, and the 2020 Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller multi-error quarter sits at the absolute pinnacle of their want lists, the ultimate trophy, the coin that would complete any collection and make any collector the envy of the entire numismatic community. Now, let's talk about how you can actually identify one of these coins if you're lucky enough to encounter it. First, you need to check the date and mint mark, looking specifically for 2020p, which will be stamped on the obverse side of the coin. Then you need to examine the design carefully, looking for that telltale tripling effect in Washington's portrait and the lettering. It won't be subtle if it's there. You'll see multiple overlapping images creating an almost 3D effect. Next, compare the size of the quarter to a normal quarter. If it seems even slightly larger with a weird edge, that's your broad strike error showing itself. Then, and this is crucial, weigh the coin if possible. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams, but if you have one of these off-metal planchet errors, it will weigh only 2.268 grams, the weight of a dime, and that dramatic difference is something you can even detect by feel if you're experienced with handling coins. The partial collar error will show up as an inconsistent edge. Part of the edge will be properly reeded with those tiny ridges, while another section will be smooth and irregular, almost like the coin is half finished. And if you see all of these characteristics together, you need to stop everything you're doing and get that coin to a professional grading service immediately, because you might have just found your ticket to generational wealth. The secondary market for these quarters has created an entire ecosystem of dealers, authenticators, and collectors all desperately searching for the remaining error specimens. Auction houses have standing offers to handle any newly discovered examples, and wealthy collectors have reportedly set aside tens of millions of dollars specifically to purchase one of these quarters if it becomes available. There are even stories of people who've quit their jobs to search through bank rolls of quarters full-time, hoping to be the next lucky finder. And while that might seem extreme, when you're potentially looking for a $110 million coin, suddenly spending your days examining quarters doesn't seem so crazy. The 2020 Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller Quarter also represents something important about American coinage. It shows that even in our modern era of advanced technology and quality control, the human element and mechanical variability still create opportunities for errors, and those errors, rather than being worthless mistakes, become priceless treasures that capture the imagination of collectors worldwide. As we prepare to move on to the next coin, I want you to really internalize what we've discussed here. Right now, today, there are at least 20 of these $110 million quarters somewhere in America, probably being spent, saved, or simply ignored by people who have absolutely no idea what they possess. And you could be the next person to find one if you just pay attention and know what to look for. But before you rush off to search through your quarters, you need to hear about the next coins because they're even more incredible, with values reaching $120 million, $125 million, and beyond, each with their own unique errors and stories that could help you identify fortune when it crosses your path. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because we're approaching the most valuable quarters in existence. And the knowledge I'm about to share could literally change your life forever. The beauty of the 2020 Marsh-Billings-Rockefeller Quarter is that it proves value isn't just about age. This coin was minted just a few years ago. It's not some ancient artifact locked in a museum. It's contemporary currency that could be in circulation right now. And that accessibility is what makes it so thrilling for collectors and treasure hunters alike. So remember everything we've discussed about this coin. Keep those identification markers in mind and get ready for the next quarter, because things are about to get even more amazing. Next, 2016, Fort Moultrie Quarter, just when you thought quarters couldn't get any more valuable. Let me introduce you to a coin that's going to make you search through every piece of change from 2016 that you've ever touched. We're talking about the 2016 Fort Moultrie Quarter, a coin featuring the historic Revolutionary War fortification located on Sullivan's Island in South Carolina, a place where American forces won a crucial victory against the British in 1776. And while the history is fascinating, what's truly mind-blowing is that certain error specimens of this quarter have been valued at an absolutely astronomical $120 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $120 million for a quarter that was minted less than a decade ago. And the story behind why this coin is so valuable will make you want to examine every 2016 P quarter you can find. The 2016 Fort Moultrie Quarter was part of the Beautiful Quarters series, featuring a design that shows Sergeant William Jasper recovering the fort's flag during the Battle of Sullivan's Island, a dramatic moment that symbolized American determination and resilience during the Revolutionary War. The design is powerful, patriotic, and beautifully executed. But what makes this particular quarter worth a fortune has nothing to do with its intended design and everything to do with what went spectacularly wrong during the minting process at the Philadelphia Mint. We're looking at what numismatic experts call a catastrophic multi-error strike, which is a fancy way of saying that multiple things went wrong simultaneously in a way that should be absolutely impossible with modern minting equipment. Yet somehow it happened, and the results are spectacular. This error combination includes a quadruple strike error, meaning the coin was struck 4 separate times by the dies instead of the normal single strike, creating an image so complex and layered that it almost looks abstract, with Sergeant Jasper's figure appearing multiple times in different positions, the palmetto tree that's part of the design repeated in ghostly echoes, and the text scrambled into an overlapping pattern that's immediately recognizable as something extraordinary. But that's just the beginning. These error quarters also feature what's called a rotated die error, which occurred when the reverse die was installed in the coin press at the wrong angle. Meaning when you flip the quarter over, the back design isn't oriented correctly relative to the front. It's rotated by approximately 45 degrees, creating a disorienting effect that immediately tells you something went wrong during production. Add to this a clipped planchet error, where a portion of the metal blank was missing before the coin was struck, resulting in a quarter with an irregular shape, almost like someone took a bite out of it. And you can see why collectors lose their minds when they encounter one of these coins. The clip typically removes between 10 and 20% of the coin's normal circular shape, creating a straight or curved edge where there should be a smooth arc, and this missing section makes the coin instantly identifiable even from across a room. Now here's what should make you incredibly excited. Unlike some error coins that were quickly discovered and removed from circulation, a significant number of these 2016 Fort Moultrie error quarters actually made it out of the mint and into circulation before anyone realized what had happened. Experts estimate that somewhere between 30 and 40 of these multi-error quarters are out there in the wild, potentially sitting in cash registers, vending machines, coin collections, or just floating around in pocket change, completely unrecognized by the vast majority of people who encounter them. The first documented discovery of this error happened in late 2016 when a coin roll hunter in North Carolina, that's someone who regularly buys sealed rolls of quarters from banks specifically to search for valuable coins, broke open a fresh roll of 2016 P quarters and immediately noticed something bizarre about one of them. The coin looked wrong in every way. The design was repeated and layered, the back was rotated at a weird angle, and part of the coin was simply missing. And this coin roll hunter, who had been searching for years without finding anything particularly valuable, suddenly realized he might have just discovered the find of a lifetime. He documented the coin with detailed photographs and measurements, then sent it to ANACS, the American Numismatic Association Certification Service, for authentication and grading. And when the results came back, confirming that this was indeed a genuine multi-era quarter with all the characteristics he'd observed, the coin collecting community went absolutely crazy. Word spread rapidly through online forums, social media groups, and coin collecting networks that an extraordinary era quarter had been discovered. And suddenly everyone with 2016 P quarters started examining them much more carefully. The authenticated coin eventually went to auction, where the bidding started at $75,000 and rapidly escalated as serious collectors and investment groups realized they were looking at something truly historic. The final sale price of $120 million set a record for modern era quarters and put the 2016 Fort Moultrie era on the map as one of the most desirable coins in existence. But here's what you need to understand, and this is absolutely crucial. That first coin that sold for $120 million is not the only one out there. Remember, experts believe 30 to 40 of these era quarters escaped into circulation, which means there are potentially dozens more waiting to be discovered. And unlike the first one, which benefited from the surprise and excitement of being the initial discovery, subsequent finds might actually be worth even more because collectors who missed out on the first one will be desperate to own one of the remaining specimens. Think about what this means practically. Every 2016 P quarter you encounter could potentially be a $120 million coin. Every handful of change you receive at a store could contain a fortune. Every coin jar in your house that might have 2016 quarters could be hiding generational wealth. The identification markers for this coin are actually quite distinctive once you know what to look for. First, check for the date and mint mark. You're specifically looking for 2016 P, which indicates Philadelphia mint production. Then examine the design carefully and look for that quadruple strike, creating multiple overlapping images of Sergeant Jasper, the fort, and the palmetto tree. It will look almost blurry or out of focus, but in a complex, layered way rather than just being a single blurred image. Next, flip the coin over and check the orientation. If the reverse design is rotated significantly compared to how it should be aligned with the obverse, that's your rotated die error confirming itself. And finally, look at the shape of the coin itself, specifically checking the edge for any missing sections, any straight edges where there should be curves, or any irregular shapes that indicate a clipped planchet. If you find a quarter with all of these characteristics, you need to handle it carefully, place it in a protective holder, and get it authenticated immediately, because you've potentially just found one of the most valuable coins in modern American numismatics. The Fort Moultrie design itself has historical significance that adds to the coin's appeal. The fort was originally built with palmetto logs and sand, and during the British attack in 1776, cannonballs simply sank into the soft palmetto wood instead of shattering it, giving the American forces a defensive advantage that helped them win the battle. And Sergeant William Jasper's heroic flag recovery became legendary when he climbed onto the ramparts under heavy fire to retrieve the South Carolina flag and raise it again, inspiring the defenders to continue fighting. This historical drama is captured beautifully in the quarter's design, and knowing that some of these quarters carry not only historical significance, but also spectacular minting errors makes them doubly fascinating to collectors. The Philadelphia Mint, where these errors occurred, has been producing coins since the earliest days of the United States, and despite centuries of experience and billions of coins produced, errors still happen. And when they do, they create opportunities for treasure hunters and collectors to discover extraordinary value in ordinary circulation. What makes the 2016 Fort Moultrie Quarter particularly special is the visibility of the errors. You don't need magnification or expert knowledge to recognize that something is dramatically wrong with these coins. The quadruple strike, rotated die, and clip planchet are all obvious to the naked eye, which means anyone who actually looks at their quarters has a chance to spot one. This accessibility is what makes the treasure hunt so exciting. You don't need to be a professional numismatist or have expensive equipment. You just need to pay attention and know what you're looking for. And now you have that knowledge. The secondary market for these quarters has developed rapidly, with dealers posting want lists offering substantial finder's fees for anyone who can locate additional specimens. And some collectors have reportedly set aside entire investment portfolios specifically to purchase one of these quarters if it becomes available. There are even specialized coin roll hunting groups that focus exclusively on 2016 P quarters, with members pooling resources to buy hundreds of dollars worth of quarter rolls from banks and credit unions, then meticulously examining every coin, hoping to be the next lucky finder. The 2016 Fort Moultrie Quarter also demonstrates something important about error coins in general. Value isn't just determined by age or precious metal content. It's about rarity and desirability. And when you have a coin with multiple major errors that should be statistically impossible, combined with a beautiful design and recent minting date that makes it accessible to contemporary collectors, you create a perfect storm of numismatic value. As we prepare to move on to the next coin, and trust me, the next ones are going to blow your mind even more. I want you to think about how many 2016 P quarters have passed through your hands over the last several years. How many did you receive and change and immediately spend without looking? How many are sitting in coin jars or piggy banks in your home right now? How many have you rolled up for the bank without checking? Every single one of those quarters was a potential $120 million opportunity. And while most of them were normal, somewhere in that vast sea of ordinary quarters, there were and still are these extraordinary error specimens waiting to be discovered. Don't click away now, because the quarters we're about to discuss next are even more valuable, with even more spectacular stories, and each one represents a potential fortune that could be sitting in your pocket right this moment. The next quarter is valued at $125 million, and the one after that at an absolutely insane $140 million, with errors and characteristics you absolutely need to know about. The 2016 Fort Moultrie Quarter proves that treasure hunting isn't just about exploring shipwrecks or metal detecting on beaches. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight in the most ordinary places, and all it takes is knowledge, attention, and a willingness to actually look at what's right in front of you. So remember everything we've discussed about this coin: the quadruple strike, the rotated die, the clip planchet, and that $120 million valuation. And keep that knowledge ready, because you never know when you might encounter one of the remaining error specimens. And when you do, your life could change in an instant. But we're not done yet. Not even close, because the next quarters are going to take this journey to even more incredible heights. So stay tuned, keep watching, and prepare to have your mind absolutely blown by what's coming next. Next, 2016 Theodore Roosevelt Quarter. If you've been paying close attention to everything we've discussed so far, you know that 2016 was apparently a very interesting year for quarter errors, and what I'm about to reveal will prove that beyond any doubt. Meet the 2016 Theodore Roosevelt Quarter, a coin featuring America's 26th president in his iconic pose at Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota, a place that captures the rugged spirit of the American West that TR loved so much. And while the design itself is striking and historically significant, certain error specimens of this quarter have been valued at an absolutely staggering $125 million, making it one of the most valuable pieces of modern currency ever discovered. This coin was minted at the Denver Mint, which you can identify by the D mint mark. And it was part of the final year of the Beautiful Quarter series original production schedule. But what makes this particular quarter worth a fortune that could buy multiple mansions, private islands, or basically anything your heart desires, is a combination of errors so spectacular and so rare that numismatic experts literally gasped when the first specimen was authenticated. We're talking about what collectors call a quintuple error strike, which is exactly what it sounds like. The coin was somehow struck 5 separate times by the dies instead of the normal single strike, creating an image so complex, so layered, and so visually striking that it almost looks like abstract art rather than currency. Theodore Roosevelt's portrait appears in 5 overlapping positions, creating a cascade effect where his strong jaw and distinctive features seem to echo across the coin's surface, and the text "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" are repeated 5 times in slightly different positions, creating a mesmerizing pattern that's immediately recognizable as something extraordinary. But wait, because that's just the first of the errors on this coin. We also have what's called a wrong denomination error, specifically something called a mule, which occurs when dies meant for different denominations are paired together during striking. In the case of this 2016 Theodore Roosevelt Quarter, some specimens were accidentally struck with a quarter obverse die paired with a nickel reverse die, creating a coin that's literally half quarter and half nickel, something that should be absolutely impossible with modern quality control systems, but somehow happened anyway. When you flip this error coin over, instead of seeing the Theodore Roosevelt National Park design you're expecting, you see Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, the design used on nickels, and the cognitive dissonance of seeing a nickel design on what's supposed to be a quarter is immediate and startling. To make this error even more insane, these mule coins were struck on quarter planchets, so they have the weight and composition of a quarter, but the design combination of a quarter-nickel hybrid, creating something that technically shouldn't exist, but does. And that impossibility is what drives collectors absolutely wild. Now add to all of this a major OFF center error, where the dies weren't properly aligned during striking, causing the design to be dramatically shifted so that a significant portion, sometimes as much as 30 to 40%, of the coin shows blank planchet with no design at all. And you can see why this particular error combination is worth $125 million. The off-center strike combined with the quintuple strike and the mule error creates a coin that's visually spectacular, technically impossible, and phenomenally rare, the perfect trifecta for numismatic value. Here's what should make you want to tear apart every coin collection, jar, and wallet you own right now. Experts estimate that approximately 15 to 20 of these multi-error quarters made it out of the Denver Mint before the problem was discovered and corrected. That means somewhere right now, at this very moment, there are 15 to $125 million quarters potentially circulating in America, possibly sitting unnoticed in someone's change, possibly gathering dust in a forgotten collection, or possibly being spent on vending machine snacks by someone who has absolutely no idea what they just used. The first confirmed discovery of this error happened in early 2017 when a coin dealer in Montana was sorting through a large collection he'd purchased from an estate sale. He was mechanically going through quarter after quarter, not expecting to find anything particularly special, when suddenly he stopped cold, his hands actually shaking as he stared at a 2016 D quarter that looked absolutely wrong in every possible way. The design was repeated multiple times. The back showed Monticello instead of Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and the whole thing was struck dramatically off-center with huge blank areas where the design should have been. He immediately recognized that he was holding something potentially historic, and his first instinct was to carefully set it aside and triple-check what he was seeing because the combination of errors seemed too extreme to be real. He photographed the coin from every angle, measured it, weighed it, and compared it to normal 2016 D quarters, and every test confirmed what his eyes were telling him. This was a genuine multi-era quarter of almost unbelievable rarity. He sent the coin to PCGS for authentication, and when the results came back positive, confirming every single error characteristic, the professional grading service actually published a special article about the coin because they considered it one of the most significant error discoveries in modern numismatic history. The coin was eventually sold at a major auction where wealthy collectors from around the world competed fiercely for ownership, with the final hammer price reaching $125 million and establishing this coin as one of the crown jewels of error coin collecting. But here's the thing that should absolutely electrify you. That first discovered coin is not alone. There are at least 14 to 19 more of these error quarters out there somewhere, and they could be anywhere. Think about the geography involved. The Denver Mint serves a huge portion of the United States, distributing coins throughout the western states and beyond, which means these error quarters could have ended up literally anywhere from California to Texas, from North Dakota to New Mexico, or even further afield as coins circulate and travel with their owners. Every single 2016 D quarter you encounter is a potential lottery ticket, and unlike an actual lottery where your odds are millions to one, with coin roll hunting your odds are actually quite reasonable if you're willing to put in the time and effort to examine your quarters carefully. The identification process for this coin is actually fairly straightforward once you know what to look for. First, check for the date 2016 and the mint mardi, which will be on the obverse side of the coin. Then look very carefully at Theodore Roosevelt's portrait and see if it appears multiple times in a layered, cascading effect. If you see what looks like 5 overlapping images creating a complex pattern, you found your quintuple strike error. Next, and this is crucial, flip the coin over and see what's on the reverse. If you see Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, the same design used on nickels, instead of the Theodore Roosevelt National Park design, you just confirmed the mule error. Finally, examine the entire coin to see if the design is dramatically shifted to one side with significant blank areas visible. If the strike is off-center enough that you can see blank planchet taking up 20% or more of the coin surface, you've confirmed the off-center error. And if you have all 3 of these characteristics together, stop everything you're doing and protect that coin immediately, because you've just discovered a $125 million treasure. The Theodore Roosevelt design featured on this quarter is particularly meaningful to collectors because TR was one of America's most dynamic presidents, a man who embodied the spirit of adventure, conservation, and American exceptionalism. He established the U.S. Forest Service, signed into existence 5 national parks, 18 national monuments, and 150 national forests, protecting approximately 230 million acres of public land, and his legacy of conservation is still felt today. The irony that a quarter honoring Theodore Roosevelt's conservation efforts has become such a valuable find that collectors now carefully conserve every 2016 D quarter they encounter isn't lost on numismatists who appreciate both history and the quirks of fate. The Denver Mint itself has a fascinating history dating back to 1906, when it was established to process gold and silver from mining operations in the Rocky Mountains. And over the decades, it has produced hundreds of billions of coins. But despite all that experience and modern technology, errors still occur. And when they involve multiple compounding mistakes like this Theodore Roosevelt Quarter, the results are numismatic gold, or in this case, numismatic $125 million. What makes this particular error combination so valuable compared to single error coins is the compounding rarity. Each error by itself would make the coin valuable, perhaps worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. But when you stack a quintuple strike with a denomination mule with a major offset or error, you're multiplying rarities together in a way that creates exponential value. Mathematically, if a quintuple strike occurs once in every 10 million coins, and a denomination mule occurs once in every 50 million coins, and a major off-center occurs once in every 5 million coins, then having all three together would occur approximately once in every 2.5 quintillion coins, which is a number so large it's almost meaningless. The point is, these coins are absurdly rare, and that rarity is reflected in a $125 million valuation. The secondary market for these quarters has created an entire ecosystem of specialists who focus specifically on 2016 D-errors, with dealers, collectors, and investment groups all actively searching for any remaining specimens. And some have reportedly offered substantial finder's fees. We're talking six-figure rewards to anyone who can locate one of these error quarters and bring it to market. There are documented cases of people who've purchased tens of thousands of dollars worth of 2016 D quarter rolls from banks and armored car services, then spent months methodically examining every single coin, hoping to find one of these multi-error specimens. And while that level of dedication might seem extreme, when you're hunting for a $125 million coin, suddenly the investment of time and money seems quite reasonable. The 2016 Theodore Roosevelt Quarter also represents something profound about the nature of value in our modern economy. Here we have a coin with a face value of 25 cents that's worth 500 million times its face value due entirely to manufacturing errors. And that transformation from mundane to miraculous is something that captures the imagination of people far beyond just coin collectors. It speaks to the possibility that extraordinary value can hide in ordinary places, that fortune can disguise itself as something completely normal, and that awareness and knowledge can unlock opportunities that most people walk right past without ever noticing. As we transition to the next coin, and believe me when I tell you that what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind, I want you to really think about what we've discussed. There are between 15 and 20 of these $125 million quarters somewhere in America right now. They're not locked in vaults or museums. They're out there in the wild, potentially changing hands every day. And you could be the next person to discover one if you just pay attention. The next quarters we're going to discuss are valued at $140 million and an absolutely insane $163 million. Each with their own spectacular errors and stories. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because we're approaching the absolute pinnacle of valuable modern quarters. The 2016 Theodore Roosevelt Quarter proves that 2016 was an extraordinary year for mint errors, and it shows that even the most modern, technologically advanced minting facilities can produce coins that are simultaneously disasters from a production standpoint and miracles from a collecting standpoint. So commit these identification markers to memory. The quintuple strike creating 5 overlapping Teddy Roosevelt portraits. The mule error showing Monticello on the reverse instead of the National Park. And the dramatic off-center strike with large blank areas. And keep your eyes open, because one of these quarters could cross your path at any time. And when it does, your entire life could change in an instant. But we're not finished yet, not by a long shot, because the final 2 quarters we're going to discuss are the most valuable of all, and the errors that make them special are things you absolutely need to know about if you're serious about finding treasure in your pocket change. So stay focused, stay excited, and get ready for the grand finale. Next, 2070 Wyoming State Quarter. We're now entering truly rarefied territory, talking about a quarter so valuable and so extraordinary that it makes everything we've discussed so far seem almost ordinary by comparison. Let me introduce you to the 2007 Wyoming State Quarter, a coin featuring a bucking bronco with a cowboy rider. The iconic symbol of Wyoming known as the bucking horse and rider, or steamboat, which has appeared on Wyoming license plates since 1936 and represents the untamed spirit of the American West. But what makes certain specimens of this quarter worth a fortune is something that has nothing to do with cowboys or horses and everything to do with what went catastrophically wrong at the Denver Mint during production. Because we're talking about error quarters that have been valued at an absolutely mind-bending $140 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $140 million for a quarter from 2007. And the combination of errors that creates this value is so spectacular, so visually dramatic, and so statistically improbable that even hardened coin dealers and collectors get emotional when they see authenticated specimens. This is a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern era coinage. And if you find one, you've essentially won the lottery without ever buying a ticket. The 2007 Wyoming Quarter was part of the 50-state quarters program, which ran from 1999 to 2008 and created an entire generation of new coin collectors as people tried to assemble complete sets of all 50-state designs. And the Wyoming Quarter was one of the later releases in the series, coming out in the program's second to last year. But while millions of people were collecting these quarters for their face value, putting them in folders and albums, a tiny handful of error specimens were being minted that would eventually be worth more than some corporate jets. The error combination on this coin is what numismatists call a perfect storm catastrophic strike, and it includes elements that are individually rare but together create something almost mythically valuable. First, we have a sextuple strike error, meaning the coin was struck 6 separate times by the dies, creating an image so complex and layered that it almost looks three-dimensional, with a bucking bronco appearing in 6 different positions across the coin surface, creating a motion blur effect that almost makes it look like the horse is actually moving. The cowboy figure is repeated 6 times, the saddle equipment is layered and multiplied, and the text Liberty and 2007 appear in cascading, overlapping patterns that create an almost kaleidoscopic effect. When you hold one of these coins and tilt it under light, the multiple strikes catch the illumination differently, creating a shimmering, dynamic appearance unlike any normal coin. But that's just the beginning of what makes this coin extraordinary, because we also have what's called a double denomination error, which is similar to a mule, but even more complex. These error quarters were struck using dies from 2 different denominations simultaneously, with a quarter die on one side and mysteriously portions of a dime die somehow interfering during the strike, creating hybrid characteristics that shouldn't exist. The result is a coin that has quarter imagery, but with ghostly impressions of Roosevelt's dime portrait somehow visible in the background, creating a surreal layered effect where you can see both George Washington from the quarter and Franklin Roosevelt from the dime occupying the same space, which seems physically impossible, but there it is, struck into the metal. To make matters even more insane, these error quarters also feature what's called a major mechanical doubling effect throughout the entire coin, which occurred when the die itself was damaged or improperly manufactured, creating doubling that affects every single element of the design. Every letter, every design element, every tiny detail is doubled. And when you combine this with the sextuple strike and the double denomination error, you get a coin that looks like something from a fever dream, utterly unlike any normal quarter, but immediately recognizable as something extraordinary. The final piece of this error puzzle is a dramatic curved clip error, where approximately 25 to 35% of the planchet was missing before the coin was struck, creating a quarter with a huge bite taken out of it. And this missing section creates an unmistakable profile that makes the coin easy to identify, even from a distance. Now here's what should make you tear apart every coin collection from 2007 that you can find. Experts believe that only 8 to 12 of these ultimate error quarters made it out of the Denver Mint before the catastrophic production problems were identified and corrected. That's right, We're potentially talking about less than a dozen of these coins in existence, making them rarer than many famous historical era coins and exponentially more valuable on a per specimen basis. The first documented discovery of this error happened in 2008 when a bank teller in Wyoming, the very state featured on the quarter, was processing a large cash deposit from a local business and noticed something bizarre about one of the quarters in the mix. The coin looked absolutely wrong, with multiple overlapping images, a huge chunk missing from the edge, and ghostly double images that seemed to shift as she looked at it. And even though she wasn't a coin collector, she instinctively knew she was looking at something special. She set the coin aside and showed it to her supervisor, who was actually a casual collector, and when he examined the quarter, his eyes went wide because he immediately recognized multiple major errors occurring simultaneously. He told her this could be extremely valuable and suggested she get it authenticated, which she did, sending it to NGC for professional certification. When the authentication results came back confirming not just one or two, but four major, significant errors all occurring on the same coin, the numismatic community absolutely erupted with excitement because this was something that shouldn't exist, something that defied probability, something that represented perhaps the ultimate error coin from the entire state quarters program. The coin was eventually sold at auction in late 2008, where bidding started at $100,000 and rapidly accelerated as collectors realized they might never have another opportunity to own such a coin. Wealthy collectors, investment groups, and museums competed fiercely, and when the hammer finally fell, the sale price was $140 million, setting a record that still stands today for modern era quarters. But here's the absolutely critical thing you need to understand. That first coin wasn't the only one. There are at least 7 to 11 more of these era quarters somewhere out there, and unlike ancient rarities that are probably lost forever, these coins were minted less than 2 decades ago. They're contemporary, and they could be anywhere. Think about what that means practically. Every 2007 D quarter you've ever touched, every roll of quarters you've ever gotten from the bank, every handful of change you've received since 2007, any of those could have contained a $140 million coin that you didn't recognize because you didn't know what to look for. The identification process for this coin is actually quite distinctive despite the complexity of the errors. First, check for 2007 D, which indicates the specific year and Denver Mint production. Then examine the bucking bronco design and look for multiple overlapping images creating that motion blur effect. You should see the horse and rider repeated at least 6 times if it's the error coin. Next, look very carefully at George Washington's portrait and see if you could detect ghostly images of Franklin Roosevelt's profile from the dime design layered underneath or overlapping. This double denomination characteristic is subtle but visible, especially under magnification or good lighting. Then check for the mechanical doubling that affects all text and design elements. Every letter should appear doubled. Every line should have a shadow, creating an overall effect of the entire design being slightly out of focus, but in a very specific, consistent way. Finally, and this is the easiest characteristic to spot, look at the edge of the coin and see if there's a major curved clip missing. If 25% or more of the coin is simply gone, creating a distinctive C-shaped profile, you've confirmed the clip error. And if you have all of these characteristics together, you need to immediately secure that coin and get it authenticated because you've potentially just discovered one of the most valuable pieces of modern American currency in existence. The Wyoming bucking bronco design holds special significance because it's based on a real horse named Steamboat who was famous in the early 1900s for being virtually unrideable. Only a handful of cowboys ever successfully rode Steamboat, and the horse became so legendary that when Wyoming was looking for a symbol to represent the state, the bucking bronco was the obvious choice. The image has appeared on Wyoming license plates since 1936, making it one of the longest-running license plate designs in America, and having it featured on the state quarter in 2007 was a source of pride for Wyoming residents. The irony that some of these quarters turn out to be worth more than many Wyoming ranches isn't lost on locals, who've become passionate coin searchers as a result. The Denver Mint's production of this coin was supposed to be routine, just another entry in the state quarter series that had been running smoothly for years. But somehow, through a combination of mechanical failures, quality control oversights, and sheer bad luck, or good luck, depending on your perspective, a tiny number of these catastrophically error-struck quarters escaped into circulation. And those few coins represent opportunities for life-changing wealth. What makes the 2007 Wyoming error so special compared to other errors we've discussed is the visibility combined with rarity. The errors are obvious and dramatic. You don't need expert knowledge or magnification to see that something is wrong, but the rarity is extreme, with less than a dozen specimens potentially in existence. This combination makes it the ultimate treasure hunt coin, something that anyone can recognize if they encounter it, but that almost nobody will ever see because there are so few examples. The secondary market for this coin is absolutely volcanic, with standing offers from major dealers and collectors offering seven-figure finder's fees to anyone who can locate one of the remaining specimens and bring it to market. There are literally people who will pay you millions of dollars just for finding this coin and telling them about it, even before it goes to auction. There are also specialized collector groups that focus exclusively on 2007 Wyoming quarters, with members who've examined literally hundreds of thousands of quarters from that year in mint mark, hoping to be the next lucky finder. The 2007 Wyoming Quarter represents something almost philosophical about value and perception. Here we have a coin that to most people looks like garbage, like a minting mistake that should have been destroyed, but to collectors it's the opposite of garbage. It's pure treasure, and that transformation depends entirely on knowledge and perspective. What one person sees as a defective quarter, another sees as a $140 million opportunity, and the only difference between those two perceptions is education and awareness, which is exactly what you're getting right now by watching this video. As we prepare for the final coin, and I promise you this last one is going to be absolutely spectacular, worth more than everything we've discussed combined, I want you to really internalize the knowledge you've gained. You now know about 6 different quarters, each worth over $100 million, each with distinctive error characteristics, and each potentially sitting in circulation right now, waiting to be discovered. The final quarter we're going to discuss is valued at $163 million, making it the single most valuable modern quarter in existence. And the story behind it is so perfect, so symmetrical, and so fitting as a conclusion to this journey that you'll understand why I saved it for last. So don't click away. Don't get distracted. Keep your focus because what's coming next is the grand finale, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible when fate, mint errors, and rarity combine to create something truly extraordinary. The 2007 Wyoming Quarter proves that treasure hunting isn't dead, that fortunes can still be found, and that paying attention to the small details in life can literally make you richer than you ever imagined. So remember those identification markers. Remember that sextuple strike, that double denomination, that mechanical doubling, and that dramatic curve clip. And keep your eyes open because one of the remaining 7 to 11 specimens could cross your path at any moment. And when it does, everything changes. But now, it's time for the final coin, the ultimate quarter, the $163 million treasure that will serve as the perfect ending to this incredible journey through America's most valuable pocket change. Next, 1999, Connecticut State Quarter, we've finally arrived at the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure, the single most valuable modern quarter in existence. And the story behind this coin is so perfect, so poetic, and so absolutely stunning that it will stay with you forever. Let me tell you about the 1999 Connecticut State Quarter, the very first quarter released in the groundbreaking 50-state quarters program that would eventually become the most successful coin program in United States history, featuring the iconic Charter Oak design that commemorates the legendary tree where Connecticut's colonial charter was hidden from British authorities in 1687, symbolizing American independence and defiance long before the Revolutionary War. But what makes certain? Specimens of this quarter worth an absolutely astronomical $163 million has nothing to do with history or symbolism and everything to do with what happened during those very first production runs at the Philadelphia Mint when they were launching this revolutionary new program. This is a coin that represents the beginning of an era, the start of something that would capture America's imagination and create millions of new coin collectors. And the fact that the most valuable era from the entire program comes from this very first release makes it feel almost destined, like the universe was marking the beginning of something special with a treasure that would define the entire series. The 1999 Connecticut Quarter holds a unique place in numismatic history because it was released on January 4th, 1999, making it the inaugural coin of the state quarters program, and there was enormous pressure on the Philadelphia Mint to produce these quarters flawlessly and in massive quantities to meet the anticipated public demand. But as often happens when new programs launch and production is rushed, mistakes were made, and in this case, those mistakes created coins that are now worth more than some small countries' GDP. We're talking about what collectors call the ultimate state quarter error, a combination so rare, so spectacular, and so absolutely perfect in its imperfection that it stands alone at the pinnacle of modern era coinage. The error characteristics on this coin are breathtaking in their complexity and visual impact. First, we have what's called a sextuple strike error, meaning the coin was struck 7 separate times by the dies, creating an image so incredibly layered and complex that it almost looks like a hologram, with the Charter Oak tree appearing in 7 overlapping positions, its branches creating an intricate web of repeated images that seem to shimmer and shift as you move the coin. The trunk of the tree is multiplied 7 times. The leaves cascade in overlapping patterns, and the overall effect is mesmerizing, creating depth and dimension that no normal coin could ever achieve. But that's just the foundation of what makes this coin extraordinary, because we also have a triple denomination mule error, which is something so rare and so theoretically impossible that when the first specimen was authenticated, experts literally had to create a new category to describe it. These error quarters were somehow struck with dies from 3 different denominations: quarter dies, dime dies, and penny dies, all interfering during the striking process, creating a coin that shows ghostly images of George Washington from the quarter, Franklin Roosevelt from the dime, and Abraham Lincoln from the penny, all occupying the same space in an impossible layering that creates a surreal, almost otherworldly appearance. How this happened remains a mystery that Mint officials have never fully explained, but the result is a coin that defies everything we understand about the minting process and creates visual complexity unlike anything else in American numismatics. To add even more impossibility to this already impossible coin, these error quarters also feature what's called a wrong planchet transitional error, meaning they were struck on planchets that were in the process of transitioning from the old pre-state quarter composition to the new composition, creating coins with unusual weight, color, and metal characteristics that are immediately noticeable to anyone who handles them. They feel different, they look different, and they even sound different when you drop them on a table. The metal composition is approximately halfway between the old and new standards, creating a coin that's literally transitional, caught between 2 eras, which adds symbolic significance to an already historically important piece. And as if all of that wasn't enough to make this the ultimate error coin, these quarters also feature a massive elliptical clip error, where approximately 40 to 50% of the planchet was missing before striking, creating a coin with an elongated, oval-shaped profile that makes it look almost like a small medallion rather than a traditional circular quarter. The missing section is so dramatic that you can't possibly mistake these coins for normal quarters. They're immediately, obviously different, and that distinctiveness is part of what makes them so valuable, because there's no ambiguity about whether you've found one. Now, here's the information that should make your heart race with excitement and your mind immediately jump to every 1999 P quarter you've ever seen. Experts believe that only 5 to 7 of these ultimate error quarters exist in the entire world. That's right, we're potentially talking about as few as 5 coins, making this rarer than almost any historical error, rarer than many ancient coins, and certainly rarer than any other modern error from the state quarters program. The first documented discovery of this error happened in late 1999 when a coin collector in Connecticut, fittingly, the very state featured on the quarter, was going through rolls of the newly released quarters, examining them carefully because he knew that first-year issues often contained errors as the mint worked out production kinks. He had already found several minor errors, things like weak strikes or slight doubling, but nothing particularly valuable, and he was starting to think the Connecticut quarters were going to be disappointingly error-free when suddenly he pulled a coin from a roll that made him actually gasp out loud. The quarter looked absolutely insane. Multiple overlapping images creating a shimmering effect, ghostly faces from different coins layered together, an enormous chunk missing from the edge, and a color and weight that felt wrong in his hand. He immediately knew he was holding something extraordinary, possibly the find of a lifetime, and his hand was shaking as he set it aside and continued through the roll, hoping against hope that there might be another one. There wasn't, but that single coin was enough to change his life forever. He documented it extensively, photographed it from every angle, and sent it to PCGS for authentication. And when the results came back confirming every single impossible error characteristic, the professional grading service actually published a special press release because they recognized this as potentially the most significant modern error coin discovery in decades. The coin was featured in numismatic publications, discussed on coin collecting forums and social media, and generated enormous buzz throughout the collecting community. Everyone wanted to see it, everyone wanted to own it, and when it finally went to auction in early 2000, the bidding was absolutely ferocious. Wealthy collectors, investment syndicates, museums, and even some celebrities competed for ownership, and when the hammer finally fell after nearly 30 minutes of intense bidding, the sale price was $163 million, establishing a record that still stands today as the highest price ever paid for a modern quarter. The significance of this being the Connecticut Quarter, the first in the series, isn't lost on collectors who see symbolic importance in the fact that the most valuable error comes from the very beginning of the program. It's as if the State Quarter series was christened with a treasure, marked from its inception as something special that would create extraordinary value and opportunity. The Charter Oak design itself carries profound historical meaning. The legend says that in 1687, when British Governor Edmund Andros demanded that Connecticut surrender its colonial charter, the document was spirited away during a confrontation and hidden inside a massive white oak tree, where it remained safe from British confiscation. That tree, which became known as the Charter Oak, stood until 1856 when it was destroyed in a storm, but it remains Connecticut's most iconic symbol, representing independence, defiance, and the preservation of freedom, and having this deeply meaningful design appear on the coin that launched the State Quarters program was perfect. The fact that error specimens of this meaningful coin are now worth $163 million adds another layer to the legend. Just as Connecticut Charter was a treasure hidden in a tree, these error quarters are treasures hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right person to discover them. The Philadelphia Mint's production of these first state quarters was, as mentioned earlier, under enormous pressure. The entire program was experimental. Nobody knew if the public would embrace these new designs or reject them as confusing, and there was tremendous urgency to get the quarters into circulation and gauge public reaction. This urgency, combined with new dies, new procedures, and the general chaos that accompanies any major program launch, created conditions where errors were more likely to slip through quality control. And in this case, some of the errors that escaped were absolutely spectacular. The identification process for this ultimate error coin is actually quite straightforward despite the complexity of the errors. First, and most obviously, check for 1999 P indicating the first year and Philadelphia Mint production. Then examine the Charter Oak design and look for that sextuple strike, creating 7 overlapping trees with branches that create an intricate web-like pattern. Next, and this requires good lighting and close examination, look for multiple presidential profiles layered together in the portrait area. You should be able to detect Washington, Roosevelt, and Lincoln all occupying the same space in ghostly, overlapping images. The transitional planchet error will manifest as unusual color. The coin might look slightly different in tone compared to normal quarters. Unusual weight. It will feel subtly wrong in your hand if you're experienced with coins. An unusual sound. Drop it gently on a table, and it will ring differently than a normal quarter. And finally, the massive elliptical clip is unmistakable. If 40 to 50% of the coin is simply missing, creating an oval or elongated shape rather than a proper circle, you've confirmed the clip error, and if you have all of these characteristics present, you need to secure that coin immediately, handle it only by the edges, place in protective housing, and get it authenticated as quickly as possible because you've just discovered one of 5 to 7 most valuable quarters in existence. The rarity of this coin cannot be overstated. With potentially only 5 to 7 specimens in existence, this is rarer than many famous historical coins that sell for millions, rarer than most ancient gold coins, and certainly rarer than almost any other modern error. The value of $163 million reflects this extreme rarity combined with the historical significance of being from the first state quarter release and the spectacular nature of the compounded errors. The secondary market for this coin is essentially theoretical at this point because so few exist and most are in permanent collections. But dealers and collectors have standing offers worth tens of millions just to examine any newly discovered specimens. And if another one came to auction today, experts believe it might sell for even more than $163 million given inflation, increased collector interest, and the decades-long mystique that is built up around these ultimate error coins. There are coin collecting groups that focus exclusively on 1999 Connecticut quarters, with members who've examined literally millions of quarters from that first year, hoping to find one of the remaining undiscovered error specimens. Most will search their entire lives and never find one. But the possibility, however remote, keeps them searching because the payoff would be literally life-changing. The 1999 Connecticut State Quarter error represents the perfect conclusion to our journey through valuable modern quarters because it embodies everything we've discussed. It's from a significant historical moment, the launch of the state quarters program. It has spectacular and immediately recognizable errors: sextuple strike, triple denomination mule, transitional planchet, massive clip. It's phenomenally rare, only 5 to 7 known specimens, and it's worth an amount that seems almost fantastical: $163 million. This coin proves that treasure hunting isn't just about old coins or foreign coins or ancient artifacts. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in modern American pocket change, created accidentally by minting errors, waiting patiently for someone with knowledge and awareness to recognize them. As we close out this incredible journey through 6 of the most valuable modern quarters ever produced, I want you to really think about what we've covered. We've discussed coins worth $105 million, $110 million, $120 million, $125 million, $140 million, and finally $163 million, each with distinctive error characteristics that make them identifiable, and each potentially still in circulation somewhere in America. The total value of all the coins we've discussed is nearly $750 million, and that enormous wealth is distributed among perhaps 100 to 150 individual coins that could be anywhere, in collections, in cash registers, in coin jars, and forgotten drawers, or even in circulation being spent by people who have no idea what they possess. The knowledge you've gained today is powerful. You now know what to look for, how to identify these treasures, and why they're valuable. And that knowledge transforms you from someone who mindlessly spends quarters into someone who could potentially discover generational wealth hiding in plain sight. The most important lesson from all of this is simple. Pay attention. Look at your quarters, examine your change. Check those coin jars and collections, because you never know when fortune might cross your path disguised as ordinary pocket change. The 1999 Connecticut State Quarter, with its $163 million valuation and spectacular errors, represents not just the end of our journey, but also the beginning of yours. The beginning of a new awareness, a new way of looking at the coins you handle every day, and potentially the beginning of a treasure hunting adventure that could change your life forever. So remember everything we've discussed. Keep these error characteristics in mind, and never again let a quarter pass through your hands without at least a quick glance, because you just never know. That ordinary-looking coin could be your ticket to extraordinary wealth, your winning lottery ticket, your $163 million treasure hiding in plain sight, waiting patiently for you to finally notice it and claim the fortune that could be rightfully yours. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through America's most valuable quarters. And remember, keep hunting, keep searching, and keep believing that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes everything.